Hey, what's up? Tim Warner here, as usual. And what I want to discuss today is it is what it is. It's a little lesson on cliches, business speak, IT lingo, and I think my overall message that I want to transmit, and I'm reminding myself as much as I'm reminding you, is I want every word out of my mouth to be meaningful. I published a video here on my YouTube channel last week on removing ums and ahs and filler words from speech. Ultimately, this is coming down to not so much objective truths, but subjective, because some people feel that ums and ahs are a perfectly appropriate and acceptable placeholder for their speech. And even from a listening or student's perspective, they like to hear that natural language. That's fine. But I think you might find that once you've recorded yourself presenting and you've become attuned to filler words, they become very loud when you hear other people use them. For example, in tech, it isn't so much, I don't hear it as much nowadays as several years ago, but the notion of starting every sentence with so, 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 oh boy, is that a pet peeve of mine, just distracting every time I hear it. One that came about in my memory about the same time as starting every sentence with so is ending every sentence with right. That one, I think, is potentially damaging to your credibility. For example, so I'm sitting here recording this video, right? So we're talking and I'm trying to make my point, right? So now I really want to ask you for approval, right? That's my main argument. Besides right being a meaningless filler word, there's a subtext of asking for approval. That's not going to do good things for your source credibility, especially if you're speaking from a podium and you're delivering training, or if you're pitching an idea to clients or to your boss or whomever. No, we don't want to end with a question right every sentence. Absolutely not. It is what it is, and at the end of the day, tend to show up on a lot of people's pet peeves lists. At the end, it's funny because to speak of subjectiveness, I don't have a problem really with either one of those. It boils down to usage and motivation. My big bugaboo is I don't want to use any terms just as a pure filler or bit of meaningless fluff. I don't believe in padding in my speech or writing or anything like that. But I find those particular expressions genuinely useful. At the end of the day, I will sometimes say. In other words, ultimately, it's just a nice, colorful idiom. So personally, I don't really mind it. Now, if it's being used as a pure crutch or filler, that's another thing. The subject of this video is, it is what it is. I was reading a little bit online on this subject earlier today, and a consensus appears to be that when you're using it is what it is, there's a dismissal. So if I say that in response to what somebody else says, it can be perceived as invalidating and dismissive, and I can definitely see that. So again, I think it comes down to being careful in the words and phrases that I use to make sure that the words I'm using, I'm doing so in a legitimate context. For me, the expression, it is what it is, conveys deep and profound wisdom. Because ultimately, it is what it is a statement of radical acceptance. And it's also an exclamation of non-judgment. It's taken me a long, long time, many years, maybe the majority of my life, to even begin to walk away from black and white polar thinking. And also the need to try to have a tidy explanation when, at least as far as I'm personally concerned, there are far more questions that don't have an adequate answer or have no answer at all. And that's okay with me, you see. I know living in ambiguity can be difficult, and it is for me in certain respects as well. But fundamentally, I love that notion of It is what it is because it conveys, as I mentioned, non-judgmental radical acceptance of exactly whatever the given situation or context is. And ultimately, either whatever it is, it's something that I can do something about, or it's something I can't. Either way, it's nice to just accept the objective reality, not to get into that rabbit hole, but to accept current circumstances for what they are. I've mentioned my mom's old wisdom, what will be, which is simply a projection of it is what it is. And again, I find that not trite in the least, but a statement of deepest wisdom, because ultimately, what will happen in the next 5 minutes, let's say? I don't know. What will be. Hopefully, I'll still be breathing air and maybe even talking to you still, because I try to scope these videos to be about 10 minutes long. But either way, whether I've planned for it or not, whether my expectation level is up here or down there, 5 minutes from now, what will be. Maybe Earth will self-destruct. I don't know. But it will be. Hope this is making some semblance of sense. I know it's super abstract, but let me bring it back to IT and daily work in industry. Again, I want to just restate how important it is for me that my words have meaning. I mean, not that I'm any more or less perfect at this than any other human being. I certainly am known to pop off sometimes, pop off without thinking, and I may say something that's awkward or uncomfortable. I think that has something to do, at least tangentially, with my autism, but I want to be careful never to blame or just try to gain an excuse. Oh, well, that's just my autism. You're going to have to accept it. Now, that's not okay. If I say something without running it, through the old cognitive filter, or sometimes, frankly, a thought may bubble into something I say, and it's passed through my filter, but my evaluation in my filter was incorrect because I wasn't judging the circumstances correctly. There, it's just incumbent upon me to take a cue and rely on those around me to a degree that they'll have enough courage to let me know that I've overstepped or said something that was inappropriate or whatever, and I can own it, make an amend for it, and do my best to not repeat that particular mistake again. But wherever possible otherwise, certainly when I'm in a formal conversational context like this, when I'm presenting or teaching, I want my language to be as focused and dense as I can get it, with a minimum of filler words. Now, I can see where speech that's so heavily schematized, for lack of a better term, can result in some people thinking, ugh, that person sounds like a robot. And that kind of gives me the creeps when I think about it. I hope that I have dynamics in my speech. I feel dynamics when I speak. And hopefully I let my face know what I'm really feeling and this kind of stuff. Yeah. All right. So let me see here if I'm missing anything. I've got a couple notes. I've gone through all of those. There's one more thing I know I wanted to say. I wonder if I can grab it from short-term memory here before we wrap up. I guess it's gone. Something my mom said when I was a kid also, when that would happen, when I would say, hey, Mom, I've got something to tell you. Oh, I forgot. Her comment was, it must not have been important. Now, I don't think that particular aphorism is deep and profound wisdom. That is kind of a chuckler as far as I'm concerned. It's bothering me, though. There was one more thing, and it was about that notion of filtering my speech in a formal context. Oh, yeah, I remembered it now. Great. So we'll end on this point. One of the best, the best compliments I've ever received as a technical trainer was from a learner who wrote me an email many years ago. And he described my training as a black hole. He made a simile to a black hole. And I remember telling my ex-wife that, and she said, are you sure that this person was paying you a compliment? Because that on its face doesn't sound very complimentary. No, it was. Because what the learner meant by that was my training is so dense, it's possible to get sucked in and you can't resist it, which I thought was an enormous compliment. And also just the analogy to maximum denseness, because it is true that I try to pack as much value as I can into the training. And why? Frankly, I think it's based on trying not to propagate aspects of poor teaching that I've experienced as a learner. I don't know if everybody can tell if somebody's BSing or adding filler to their lessons, but I know I can tell. At least I know how it feels when I'm listening to a teacher and it seems that they're pontificating more to hear their voice than to transmit knowledge. And it seems like they're really tap dancing trying to fill in time. I know that that's a waste of everybody's time. So if for no other reason I'm so deeply motivated to avoid that, I want to overcompensate really and go in the other direction and deliver as much possible value as I can per unit time. And speaking of which, we've run over 10 minutes now, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you as always. See you next time.